A time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and Joe Dolan.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast.
Yeah, let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast, and it is presented by DraftKings as always. Speaking of DraftKings, we've got two more contestants for the July Best Ball Draft over at DraftKings, head-to-head with me and Joe. I am me. That's a great line. Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, at Ross Tucker NFL on all the social media platforms. All the shows are always posted, and the highlight clips of the various shows are posted at Ross Tucker Pod. Joe is Joe Dolan at FG_Dolan, the master of all he oversees over at fantasypoints.com. Make sure you use the code 21Feast when you sign up here in 2021 for your Fantasy Point subscription, which you absolutely should do. So excited, by the way, for today's guest, Scott Fish. He's like famous. I mean, he's more famous than me and Joe, that's for sure.
Very much so.
Everybody knows who Scott Fish is because of the Scott Fish Bowl. And we are going to be able to talk to Scott momentarily. The first thing I want, though, we got two more best ball contestants. Mike Shirk, who last week sent not only his Patreon, but also he signed up at fantasypoints.com. So kudos to Mike Shirk. And then you've got Justin Christopher. I said on Monday's Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Joe, I said the first new patron we get, you're in the best ball draft. Well, that was JC, Justin Christopher. So those two guys are in. We've got 4 in. We'll pick 3 each of the next 2 weeks, and then we go. And then it's time to go. Those of you that went ahead and signed up for Patreon, because there's a couple others that you weren't first, you do one other thing and you're in. So those other guys, Giancarlo and Jason and Ben, you do one other thing, you're in. So all you got to do, take advantage of one of the sponsors, Warby Parker, DraftKings, whatever, and you're in. Joe, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ross. I'm once again looking forward to not being the star of this particular program because literally Scott dropped everything to be on the program at the last minute. Like, we were scrambling for a guest. We had some things lined up that didn't work out. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm doing the Scott Fish Bowl draft right now. And Scott Fish is, well, it's named after him. So I like the double entendre there, Scott. It took me, you wouldn't believe how long it took me to realize, oh yeah, Fish Bowl and bowl, it kind of has the football connotation there.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm a blockhead, but it's great to have you on board. I just got through my 7th pick in the Fish Bowl, and Ross, I have to tell you, we talk on here about strategy and all that stuff and best ball. Throw it out the window. Just throw it out the window. It is the single most uncomfortable draft anybody is in every year. So I have to thank you for torturing me, Scott.
Yeah, that's part of the point of it. I wanna throw everybody off and put everybody on an even playing field and try to think through the settings and try to figure out how to play. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, by the way, guys.
Yeah, Scott, thank you so much for coming on. At ScottFish24 is how you can find him on social media. He's all over the place. ScottFishBowl.com is where you can hear more about the Scott Fish Bowl draft. And I know, Scott, I know you've been on before, but it's been a while. So for people that are not familiar, can you please tell them about Scott Fish Bowl?
Sure. It's basically a giant pro-am that brings in like analysts from all of the industry, celebrities like actors, actresses, former professional athletes. Like this year, the theme is bands, and like Mike Mills from REM is playing in the REM division. Like it's celebrities from all over, along with analysts all over the industry and just regular fans, just people, fans of this show, fans of, fantasy football, just playing alongside right with these people, interacting with them, chatting with them daily about their drafts. It's just a giant fun event, and we use it to help raise a lot of money for charity. And it's just one heck of a ride every year.
All right. So how did it start and what charity?
Sure. So it started in 2010. It grew really slowly. Like Mike Clay, who I'm sure won the first one. We just started as a reader league for the site I ran at the time. But each year I kept inviting more and more analysts to come play. And when one analyst says he'll play, another analyst will be like, oh, if he's playing, I'll play. And it just steamrolled to the point where just almost everyone plays in this thing now. This is the 11th year. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was helping a buddy with a Toys for Tots drive in Las Vegas. And he bought the toys in Las Vegas, and he couldn't do it the next year. And so I kind of picked up that mantle, and I was 35 at the time, and it coincided with a heart attack for me. And at that point, like when you have something like that happen to you, something in the back of your head just says, I want to be a better person. I want to be a better role model. I want to, be a better leader. I want people to see the best possible version of me. I want to be the best possible version of me. And so I started, pushing everywhere. Bring a charitable element to your fantasy league. If you have a fantasy league, give one entry fee to charity. And with the hundreds of thousands of fantasy leagues, we can do a ton of good. So every year we raise a ton of money for Toys for Tots. We do give some to, like last year we gave some to Equal Justice Initiative. This year we're giving some to Trevor Project. In previous years we've given some to like food shelves or hurricane relief, stuff like that. But the vast majority goes to buy toys all around the country. Analysts go to buy these toys all around the country in different cities for Toys for Tots.
And then obviously, Scott, one of the big things, one of the easiest ways, and one of the most fashionable ways for fantasy cares to raise money is the wardrobe. Now, I have to tell you, I moved to Greenville, South Carolina, a year ago in 2 weeks, and my neighbor across the street, I don't think knew what I did. And I walked out, and I was wearing the Lego logo shirt from last year,
sure.
from RotoWare, and because last year's theme was toys, and he goes, "Oh, that's that Scott Fishbowl." And then we struck up a conversation, and I told him what I did for a living, and it's gone national. But this year I got the AC/DC style logo,
sure.
Because for the music theme. The RotoWare partnership is a big thing as well, and
yep.
I mean, hey, look, let's see your shirt, by the way. Pull it down here.
This one I can bring it up. It's kind of a Grateful Dead-ish inspired one, and then on the back, I don't know if you can see.
You got tour dates.
Yeah, we got tour dates of all 11 SFBs and their themes, and then a bunch of different SFB designed band logos, like like Nirvana and Public Enemy and stuff, like made in a fishbowl twist. Yeah.
So and those shirts go, the proceeds from those shirts go to Fantasy Cares as well.
Yep. We use those to buy toys, and we do a 24-hour potathon that actually, it was Monday into Tuesday, so it's over now, but we raise money during that as well.
Absolutely awesome. Again, check him out on Twitter at ScottFish24. And Scott, one of the other reasons why I wanted to have you on, we've been having some awesome shows recently. Last week, Michael Beller. Before that, we had the Majuk ladies.
So you needed a break. You're like, too many awesome shows in a row. Let's take it down a notch before we get back into it.
No, you know what I've realized? People really like healthy debates, healthy discussions. They like to hear people, everybody's getting ready for their drafts. Everybody's excited. They like to hear people that you are higher on than others, people that you're lower on than others, and then hear what Joe thinks about that. So let's just dive right into it. We'll go with guys you're higher on than most. And wow, this is an interesting one because I'm going to talk about him with Greg Cosell on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast later this week. You are higher on Carson Wentz than other people. Joe and I watched every snap he played last year, Scott. So I'm very curious to hear your reasoning and logic.
Yeah, it's not good. If you watched last year, it's not good. And he was constantly pressured, constantly holding the ball too long, constantly getting sacked. And there is admittedly a possibility that he is David Carr now, not Derek Carr, David Carr, when he got sacked like 80 times with the Texans, and it just turned him into a shell of what we thought he could be as a prospect. It's possible he's broken. It's very possible. However, he's got the best offensive line he's ever had, and arguably one of the best in football now. He's got Campbell, and he's got Hilton, and his tight ends are decent, more like Hawks, super athletic. He's got plenty of options at wide receiver that are healthy now. He's got a pass catching back in Naheem Hines that he can dump it off to if he needs to get rid of the ball, hopefully a little quicker this year. I feel like reuniting with Frank Reich, who is, his quarterback's coach when he had that 33-7 season, touchdown to interception ratio. I just think it's such a better situation. And if he can rebound, him going, mid double digit rounds, being ranked as like a low end, like QB 15, 17, 20, right in that range. That's really low for a guy who's got a lot of potential upside in an offense that I think should be pretty decent.
Scott, this actually leads me to another point, because Ross and I, as Ross mentioned, we had been doing these shows where we're having a healthy debate, but I actually want to mix some kind of fishbowl analysis into this, because Wentz is fascinating in the fishbowl because you weigh sacks as a negative, you weigh incompletions as a negative. So when you're looking at that, so let's look at it from a macro perspective. Right. You're trying to level the playing field, because I remember 2 years ago, Lamar Jackson just dominated the fishbowl because it's super flex. You wanted to kind of bring those pocket passers who are out of vogue for fantasy back into the fold. And just to relate this to Carson Wentz, because he got sacked so much last year, it's possible for quarterbacks to basically put up negative points in the fishbowl this year, and they're going to do it with much more frequency than they would in a normal league.
Right. Yeah. And part of the reason for that scoring is not just, towards rushing quarterbacks. It's towards just good and bad quarterbacks in general. Mm-hmm. In the fishbowl, sacks get ding negative. Poor completion percentage is negative. Interceptions are a huge hit. They're -4 instead of a normal league that's -2. So it separates the tiers between, if you have a good quarterback have a good game, you're going to get good points. A bad game, you're going to really hurt. You're going to get almost nothing, maybe even negative. So that was the point for that scoring. With Wentz, I mean, the reason I brought sacks into it was there was a lot of argument. Are sacks a quarterback stat, or are they an offensive line stat? And so I wanted to bring that in. And I think, I don't know that Carson Wentz is going to prove the theory on either end this year, because, he had a horrible offensive line last year and he got sacked a ton, or this year he's got a great one. We'll see what happens to him. But there's no question he held the belt too long, and that was a big reason for a lot of those sacks last year.
You're talking to a former offensive lineman. I know. With Ross. Ross knows that sacks are a quarterback stat, right, Ross?
That's the commonly held belief.
Well, no, in all sincerity, sacks are an offense stat. I think people would be surprised how often the receiver didn't know he was hot, or the running back didn't block the right guy. But I would say it's probably quarterback 1, O-line 2.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why Peyton Manning and Brady get sacked so little. It's like they haven't always had great O-lines, right? Like, they've done a really good job of getting rid of the ball. 3 receivers that you're higher on than most.
Sure.
Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton, and Laviska Shenault. Sure. Give me a line on those guys, Scott.
Just Keenan Allen going, in the 3rd, sometimes in the 4th in drafts is crazy to me, because when he was healthy with Herbert, he was getting nearly 10 targets a game. Like Herbert to just completely tunnel vision for him. And with Lombardi going over there, and it's going to be Herbert's 2nd year. Eckler should be healthy most of the year too, which, you could say that a lot of receptions might tick that down a little for Allen. But I just think the offense is going to be better as a whole. And I'm a big rising tide raises all boats fan for fantasy. I just think the offense is going to be even better, and he's still going to pepper Allen with just tons and tons of targets. I would be like ecstatic with him as my wide receiver 1. I would gladly take him in the second, but I don't have to take him there. I can wait around, or sometimes 2 in some drafts to get him. I'm way higher on him. Cortland Sutton going in the 7th. It seems to ridiculous to me. I know there's a lot of options there, and I know Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. What are you going to do? But he put up awesome numbers and looked like an alpha receiver with like Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen, like bad Joe Flacco, end of career Joe Flacco, and Brandon Allen. And I feel like he can overcome. I think he's QB proof is what I'm saying. And with those other options, I think the targets he does get are going to be good. And, he'll have, less coverage. He won't have to go up for those jump balls into double coverage like he used to. And then Shenault, I just think they're going to want to get him in space a ton. He ended the season last year with 5 really good games, averaging over 15 fantasy points a game. I know that there's been injury issues, but some of the options there in the offense have gone. Trevor Lawrence is a major upgrade. I just think this is a year where if he's going in the 11th or 12th, I'm willing to take the shot on him, and I would actually take him a little bit early. I'm fine with him as my wide receiver 3 or flex play.
Ross, Cortland Sutton's a guy that, unfortunately, every year you can't avoid it. Even if you do 100 drafts, it feels like you got blind spots on. I also think part of the reason Cortland Sutton could be intriguing this year is the possibility that Aaron Rodgers is there in Denver. Denver, if you look at the betting markets, they're like plus 2,500 to win the Super Bowl, which is a ridiculous number. I mean, look, Pittsburgh's like plus 4,000, and Pittsburgh won the AFC North last year. It's entirely based on the notion that Aaron Rodgers could be traded there and become a quarterback this year. So Cortland Sutton, Judy would take a big boot. KJ Hamler would get a boost. Fant would get a boost if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback there, which is interesting. You and I have talked on this program, Ross, though. Laviska Shenault is a player whom I have changed my opinion on like 30 times. So when Urban Meyer and Darrell Bevell, it's the
I get it.
Yeah, like when Darrell Bevell and Urban Meyer got hired, I was like, oh man, Laviska Shenault, he can run, Percy Harvin, woo, 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 woo. And then they come out in the draft, and Urban Meyer flat out admits, Travis Etienne, I didn't want you. I wanted Kadarius Toney. And then they're using ETN in that Harvin-like role in OTAs, and I'm like, all right, now I'm back down on Laviska Shenault. Like, why would they want Kadarius Toney if they have this guy? And then it comes out OTAs, oh my God, they love him. The new staff loves him. He's looking great. I'm back in on Shenault at price, but I reserve my right to change my opinion yet again because there is so much unknown with Urban Meyer there, Ross.
It's always about price. Right. Yeah. It's the 11th, 12th round. Yeah. Like I feel like that's cheap for him.
I feel like I'm wearing my Jaguars shirt today, whatever this color is. It's like it's Jaguars-esque. People need to check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. So I've never seen this before. Okay, Joe, when we have guests on, this is one of my favorite things we do. Up until, September 1st, who are you higher on? Who are you lower on than the consensus? Scott texted me all the backup running backs. He's higher on all the back. I want so many of them this year. Nobody has ever said before, Joe, they're high on all the backup running backs. Explain yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of them. It's Tony Pollard. It's Alexander Madison. It's Trey Sermon, who you can argue, is he actually the backup or not? Yeah. Probably to Mostert at this point. Daryl Henderson, even in the later rounds, like Justin Jackson, or like even Darrington Evans at the very, very end of your draft. But for me, that extra week, like we've already seen injuries. Yeah, I got a little.
By the way, Scott is doing this, okay? Scott is literally giving this analysis while his son is pulling the earbud out of his ear. This is amazing. Hey, buddy.
Can you wave hi? All right, go back to mommy.
So Scott, like that's let me bring you back into the conversation because I want to involve the fishbowl here.
I can. Okay.
I am very glad that you're higher on all the backup running backs because I'm going to need to be high on the backup running backs because I have just 1 through 7 rounds of the fishbowl. So, let's go back to some of the builds that have been successful in the fishbowl. Have you found that, quite frankly, I feel like zero anything can work given the scoring format?
That's part of the thing with balanced scoring is that you can come through with any strategy you want and it will work. It's got the super flex for the quarterbacks. It's got tight end premium for the tight ends. It's got points per first down, which generally boost running backs. It's got the PPR for the half PPR anyway for the wide receivers, and also wide receivers you have to start 3, so their value comes in their depth. Mm-hmm. So I think you can use any strategy, but I really feel as far as all the running backs, Pollard, Madison, Sermon, like Henderson, those types, they're going 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th round. And this is a year where we got an extra game. We already saw last year, and there's been a trend towards second running backs getting more and more work. More injuries are happening. There's, you got bye weeks right in the middle of your season, 6 to 14. I figure with bye weeks, injuries, the extra game, coaches seen that we have the extra game and already a trend towards the second running back getting more work. We're going to see those backups get legitimately 125 to 175, maybe even more touches. And if a stud goes down, you've got a huge option right there. So when I'm in the double-digit rounds, I'm already drafting my bench players. I want all of those guys. I want as many of them as I can get.
The tight ends you're higher on than most. I've seen a lot of people that are into Troutman with the Saints, but I guess I don't know his ADP, but I've been hearing that a lot. And then you got Komet with the
and I was starting to think maybe I'm not higher on than most. I'm just trying to get him everywhere because they're going so late. I didn't grab their ADP right before I got on here, but it's late enough that I want as many of them as I can get. Troutman's just jumping into a spot with more opportunity, and the way Winston treated Brait in Tampa, I'm hoping he treats Troutman that way. I'm hoping we see those end zone targets that he liked to hit with it. He trusted his tight ends in Tampa, especially around the goal line. And tight ends, historically, especially the later, the deeper ones, tend to be pretty touchdown dependent. And if you got a situation like that, I'm going to like it. And Komet, I just think it's open for him to thrive there. I think that he's, he ended the season last year with like 6 or 7 targets, and in 5 of his last 6 games, he was really starting to get worked into that offense. I do like Mooney there, but I think Troutman is going to get a decent amount of work.
So Scott, let's talk about more into the fishbowl and some of the rule changes that you made this year.
Sure.
Like I said, the draft always makes me uncomfortable. I think it makes everybody uncomfortable. Like, I think it's hard to write strategy pieces for it because the leagues are so different. But I think one of the biggest cliches in fantasy football is zigging when others zag. Mm-hmm. On a macro level, you zigged when others were zagging. Everybody is kicking kickers out of their leagues.
Yeah.
You brought them into the fishbowl. What's different about it? What are you doing differently with kickers? What do you think the kickers are going to add to the fishbowl? I've been in the league for years. You haven't had kickers or defenses as long as I can remember. What are you doing with kickers this year that's different than other leagues might be doing?
Yeah, so there's a thing in the industry where you want to ban kickers, get them out of the league. There's a lot of people who think they're very unpredictable. Yeah, Ross is raising his hand right here. But there's also, there's multiple reasons for that. But one of the main reasons is their scoring is random and whatnot. There are analysts that I really respect in this industry, like the John Paulsons and Andy Barons and people like that think kickers are very predictable, and they're predictable and projectable, and you can see the trends. You can take kickers in games that have high betting lines, over under betting lines, and they generally do well, things like that. So I wanted to cater to both parties. I wanted to make a compromise. I wanted a win-win-win situation where they want the ban kickers, people win, the kicker lovers win, and I win for mediating it, I guess. But it's an old office line, of
course.
But this way in fishbowl, they can be flexed. You don't have to start them. You don't have to draft them. You can, if you don't like them, you don't have to do anything with them. But if you like them, you can bring them in, throw them in your flex, and prove that they are flex worthy and that you can project them. It's just a compromise.
Yeah, you can start up to 4 kickers, Ross. I know you're excited to think about that. No, now I think most people are going to be starting 2 quarterbacks. I think that's definitely part of the strategy of the fishbowl. Now, Scott, before we get to talking more about fantasy cares and some of the things that if you're listening and aren't participating in the fishbowl that you can do, what are some of the interesting builds that you've seen thus far in drafts? Anything stand out in particular about what people are doing?
Yeah, I think the most interesting builds I see are the zero builds, the ones where like I'm not taking a wide receiver till the 9th round, or I'm punting running back till the 7th or 8th round. I do find it interesting when I see someone start, and there's value to this is valid, but I've seen someone start with 3 straight tight ends, and with the tight end premium, tight ends have the highest floor, and they still also have an explosive ceiling in fishbowl. So I found that interesting. I like to buoy my teams with tight ends, like have a decent amount of them, but taking 3 on the top is really interesting.
Yeah. And so to wrap everything up here, I'm sure a lot of people have been listening and know who you are just through your presence in the industry. The Scott Fishbowl fan spots are massive. But ultimately, this is all about charity. This is all about giving back. What are some of the things people can do if you're in the fishbowl, if you're not in the fishbowl, that can help out the kids that Fantasy Cares helps so much?
Sure. So, a couple of years ago, I decided I'm going to promote, you don't have to give to us. You can just give to any charity you're passionate about. I just want to build this community and build that idea that all these leagues can do a ton of good. So actually just take your league and be like, we should give part of it. We should give an entry fee to charity. That's what makes me happy, that it's just being done out there. It doesn't need to be with us. For us, most of our stuff is done now. The at SFB Podathon handle on Twitter, their link to donate is still open. You can do that, but otherwise really just find something that you're passionate about and try to bring it to your league. That's the best way, honestly.
Scott, what you built this thing into is amazing. I really appreciate you coming on the show, especially on short notice. You even brought an extra guest on with your son, which was awesome. Seriously, what you've done is really impressive, man. You should be extremely proud. And the goals that you set out for yourself after the heart attack, you're doing them. Like a lot of people say stuff like that, and then they don't actually, you're doing them, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There he is, Scott Fish. Awesome having him on the show. And awesome, Joe. Anytime you can get ridiculous odds, we like that. We like when the odds are on our favor. How about 264-1 odds on there to be a knockout in the first round of UFC 264? Love it. Just make sure you get the Sportsbook app from DraftKings on your phone. Use promo code Ross. $264 when you bet on a main event fighter to win by first round knockout. I think that means bet on Poirier to knock out McGregor in the first round. That would be awesome. That's code Ross. You guys know the deal there. You also know these shows have been amazing, primarily because we're getting great guests on. And I love Joe's feedback. I love Joe's, interaction. Some of the guys, by the way, Joe, that he wasn't as high on, Tyler Lockett, Josh Jacobs, Chase Edmonds, that surprises me, and Robert Tonyan. Tonyan I get, that's a touchdown thing. What do they call that? Regression of the mean or whatever. But Chase Edmonds, why do you think, when you get a chance to ask Scott, why do you think he's lower on Chase? Is Chase Edmonds going really high right now?
Well, he's going in like the 6th round, and I just think that means Scott's probably just drafting somebody else at that spot as opposed to drafting Chase Edmonds. He's actually still on the board in my Scott Fishbowl draft, and I only have one running back so far. So I'm eyeing up Chase Edmonds. Maybe I should rethink that, given that Scott's a little bit lower on him. But yeah, Tunion's a pretty obvious one. And the thing with Lockett, who I just drafted in my Scott Fishbowl draft, so maybe I should have rethought that one. It's a consistency thing for him. He has huge games and he has like some games where he's a complete zero. So he's been kind of an inconsistent player while people acknowledge how good that he actually is.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, Joe. I'm with you on that for sure. And I think what's funny, what Kenyon Drake's now complaining about the guy in Kingsbury that got him paid twice. I don't really understand that. I do understand next week's show will be even better. Giving away 3 best ball entries. Get in here. I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Feast podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and the College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.